Everything we think we know about the Otsutsukis is absolutely wrong, and I will prove it by the end of this video. From the origins of the Otsutsuki on Earth, the creation of the chakra fruits, and what really happened between Kaguya and Ishiki Otsutsuki. Everything is a lie, and the statements from the Boruto guidebook are what sent me down this massive rabbit hole. First, let's start off with what we think we actually know happened between Ishiki Otsutsuki and Kaguya once they came to Earth. When Ishiki and Kaguya arrived on Earth, Kaguya ended up backstabbing Ishiki and feeding the lower half of his body to the divine tree. This supposedly created a chakra fruit, which she then ate. This is what we believe took place. However, this is wrong because the Boruto guidebook says something completely different. It states Kaguya, who is of a lower rank than Ishiki, plots to betray and dispose of him. As the sole remaining Otsutsuki, she takes over and comes to rule the world. This is very interesting because nowhere does it say that Ishiki was fed to the divine tree. And if you actually think about it, it makes much more sense for this to be true because of what Ikemoto and Momoshiki have confirmed about the divine tree. The divine tree consumes all living things on a planet, whether they have chakra or not. This is why, even at the point where we are at in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, Kashinkoji tells us that the planet will die. The planet will not literally explode or disappear, but every living thing on it will die. So if we believe that Kaguya used Ishiki's lower half as a sacrifice to the divine tree, which created a chakra fruit, which she then ate, then that would mean that there should technically not be any living creatures left on the planet at all, because they would have simply been absorbed by the divine tree and they would have died. This means that Kaguya did not feed Ishiki's body to the divine tree. And just like what the text said in the Boruto guidebook, the simple plan was to dispose of Ishiki, simply get rid of him. And Momoshiki even confirms this when he tells us that in order to sacrifice an Otsutsuki to create the divine tree, that Otsutsuki must be a living Otsutsuki. This is why Momoshiki saves Kawaki from burning himself. Otherwise, he could have simply fed a burning Kawaki to the divine tree. However, he did not because the requirement is a living Otsutsuki. So when we go back to Ishiki and Kaguya, even if Kaguya wanted to, she could not have fed the lower half of Ishiki's body to the divine tree at all. His lower half would be considered dead. No blood was being pumped through it, it was no longer connected to his brain, and thus it is no longer conscious, meaning it was not alive, therefore could not have been used as a sacrifice for the divine tree. And look, even if we go back through the story, nowhere in the manga does it actually say that Kaguya Otsutsuki fed Ishiki's lower half to the divine tree. Ikemoto only tells us that Kaguya, for some odd reason, ended up betraying the clan. He doesn't add anything more to that story. Personally, I genuinely do not understand where this idea came from, that Ishiki's lower half was fed to the divine tree, but I've seen it being said so often. Everyone simply believed it, including me, but looking back, it actually makes no sense. I believe that we were simply trying to connect all the pieces together, and this is why it was easy to believe that the lower half of Ishiki's body was simply fed to the divine tree. But by realizing that this is not true, we can actually come up with the real answer for why Kaguya betrayed Ishiki. First things first, if Ishiki was not used to create a chakra fruit, how did Kaguya obtain a chakra fruit in the first place? Because it was actually confirmed in the Naruto manga that she did, in fact, eat the chakra fruit. So we know that it is canon. It is not something that only occurred in the anime. This is where we have two possible theories for how this was actually possible. And the second possibility is the scariest in my opinion. So if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to like, hype up this video, and subscribe for more videos just like this. The first possibility is that when Kaguya and Ishiki came to the planet, the original plan was for Kaguya to be sacrificed and Ishiki to obtain the chakra fruit. This plan is the Otsutsuki norm. However, when Kaguya saw this opportunity, everything changed. The difference between this planet and every other planet they must have been to was the fact that on this planet, the chakra fruit was already there. The chakra fruit was there for the taking right from the beginning. It was basically free for anyone to come and take. Kaguya, seeing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, decided to steal the chakra fruit for herself. In this case, no one would have to be sacrificed to create a chakra fruit, and since she is the lower-ranking Otsutsuki, she did not have to play that role. All she had to do was backstab Ishiki and take the chakra fruits for herself. And this is exactly what she ended up doing. But how is that possible to begin with? Who would just leave a chakra fruit there in the first place? The person who would do so would be the missing Otsutsukis. They must have planted a divine tree, but they were forced to run away due to being banished by the clan. When we take a look at all of the tablets of the Otsutsuki's, if you read them from right to left, you would see that there is an order which matches when all these Otsutsuki's arrived. Ishiki and Kaguya. Then we have Momoshiki and Kinshiki. But now, if we add the missing Otsutsuki's, we have the missing Otsutsuki's first, then Ishiki and Kaguya, and finally Momoshiki and Kinshiki. This would mean that the only duo of Otsutsuki's who could have planted a divine tree before Ishiki and Kaguya arrived would be the missing Otsutsuki's themselves. We know that the clan has rules, to the point where Urashiki, despite being so far away from the Otsutsuki clan, still did not want to kill Tonori, because as Urashiki says himself, they are always watching, to the point where they also know about Boruto's mysterious powers. This is why Kaguya knew that they would eventually come and attack her. And this may be why the missing Otsutsuki's fled. They must have also feared that whatever they had done would be reported back to the clan, so they left before anything could have happened to them. But although this theory sounds good, I know that some people might say, wait, am I not contradicting myself? Didn't I say that creating a chakra fruit should kill all living things on the planet? So how is it possible for humans to exist if a chakra fruit has already been created? The answer to this question is simple. When we look at Momoshiki and Kinshiki before they came to Earth, we can see that on the planet which they were at, where we literally see Momoshiki eating a chakra fruit, there are multiple different divine trees on that one planet. This would mean that the planet had its living energy harvested multiple times. This tells us that after a certain period of time, life must resume. That would later allow the Otsutsuki to plant another divine tree on that same planet. This makes even more sense when we hear Tonori and Amato compare the Otsutsukis to farmers or harvesters. After a harvest, there is a cooldown period before farmers can go and plant seeds again. This is a cycle that all farmers must follow. And this is the same cycle for the Otsutsuki's. They harvest the chakra from a planet, killing all the living things on it, then they leave, allowing life to eventually begin again. And when the planet reaches the optimal point, they come back and they harvest the planet once more, rinse and repeat. And we know this to be true because this is exactly what Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and Urashiki were talking about. When they came to the planet, they realized that the planet had already reached its maximum point. It was way beyond that, to the point where it was exceeding the space-time. So Momoshiki and Kinshiki were confused as to why another divine tree wasn't planted on the planet. This shows proof of this optimal point that all planets end up reaching, which ends up letting an Otsutsuki know when it is time for it to be harvested. For the missing Otsutsuki's in this case, they did not eat the chakra fruit that was produced during the harvesting phase. This allowed the cycle of life to continue, with the chakra fruit remaining untouched until Ishiki and Kaguya pulled up. And then Kaguya Otsutsuki backstabbed Ishiki and ate the chakra fruit for herself. This is theory number 1, and it is very compelling. Now the second theory replaces the missing Otsutsuki's, and it replaces the missing Otsutsuki's with none other than Shibai Otsuki. Because although the missing Otsutsuki theory is fine, there are a few questions that we all have in the series that are answered when Shibai Otsuki is replaced by the missing Otsutsuki's. And it is this: how does Amato have access to Shibai Otsuki's DNA? And why does Momoshiki let us know that omnipotence was previously casted on Earth? If it was only an ability that Shibai Otsuki or God Otsutsuki's have possession of, nobody else could do it. Momoshiki couldn't do it, Ishiki couldn't do it. This is a divine ability. So how is this really possible? This is where Shibai Otsuki ends up coming and makes everything make sense. He ties the entire story from Amato and Momoshiki. But actually, Shibai Otsuki did all of this alone. Shibai never had a partner. And this makes perfect sense because this is almost exactly what we were told. The technique that Shibai Otsuki did to plant the vine trees wherever he went is the same technique that Ishiki was going to use if he never found out about Boruto. Ishiki's technique was to use Jigen as a sacrifice and then revive himself in Kawaki when he died. So Jigen would be the person who has the Otsutsuki DNA necessary, and after a little bit of time, he would come back in Kawaki and then he would eat the chakra fruit. Since I believe that Shibai Otsuki ended up doing all of this by himself, this is the method I believe he ended up using. He simply found a vessel and ended up sacrificing himself and resurrected himself in that vessel, and then would later on come to eat the chakra fruit. This explanation makes the most sense because he doesn't have a partner. But why do I believe he doesn't have a partner at all? The reason I believe so is because of the explanation that Amato ends up giving us on how exactly Shibai Otsuki ended up obtaining godhood. This is what he says. By repeatedly undergoing karmic resurrection, Shibai cheated death and devoured many fruits over several millennia, and eventually the accumulative evolution led to godhood. And now, if we actually try and understand what Amato is saying, it doesn't make sense for Shibai Otsuki to cheat death if he had a partner that would be the one to be sacrificed. We know that Shibai Otsuki is the one that ends up devouring the chakra fruits. We also know that Shibai Otsuki is the one that ends up sacrificing himself as he has to cheat death using the karma. From what we know, these roles are usually played by two different Otsukis. As we know from Kaguya and Ishiki, Ishiki would eat the chakra fruit and Kaguya would be the one to use the karma to revive herself as she is the lower ranked Otsutsuki. Just like with Momoshiki and Kinshiki, Momoshiki eats the chakra fruit as we have previously seen, and Kinshiki would be the one to be sacrificed and he would use the karma to revive himself. So if Shibai Otsuki actually had a partner, the partner should be the person who is cheating death using the karma. It should not be Shibai Otsuki. This is why Shibai Otsuki doesn't actually have a partner. He is doing this all on his own, and he may be one of the very few people who actually started this entire process of finding a way to create these chakra fruits and eating it for himself. Him becoming this god ended up giving him this legacy, and his methods was then copied by other people. This is why Shibai Otsuki is so revered, as he is the one who actually gave the Otsukis a path towards godhood to escape this actual dimension. He is the one who did it first, and the Otsutsuki clan, after looking at what Shibai Otsuki did, they tried to create a plan to do so themselves. This is when the idea of a duo of Otsutsukis end up working, as one Otsutsuki is supposed to guard the chakra fruit, guard the divine tree to later on eat the chakra fruit for themselves, and then the one who ends up sacrificing himself is simply supposed to do so because he is the lower ranked Otsutsuki. They watch and watch till one of the Otsukis ends up turning into a potential god, gets all these crazy abilities, and potentially they go find another partner, and the one who is a lower ranked Otsutsuki becomes a higher ranked one, where they now end up being the person to devour these chakra fruits. This is a possible explanation, but it actually makes perfect sense as to how Shibai's potential method ended up translating into this duo plan of Otsukis that go from planet to planet. Now, since Shibai Otsuki ended up cheating death, doing this all on his own, obviously no Otsutsuki would be there to recover Shibai Otsuki's body. which is why Shibai Otsuki's body could have been on this planet. Since nobody really had this method, Shibai Otsuki is the first one, it would make sense that his body would still remain on Earth if he was the first one to ever even do so in the first place. And thus, nobody actually found Shibai Otsuki's remains apart from somebody on Earth. And that is Ikemoto, as we know that Ikemoto somehow, some way had access to Shibai Otsuki's remains. So personally, I think that Shibai Otsuki actually didn't have a partner at all. And if he did, it has to be Ikemoto. I'm sorry. If he actually did have a partner, it has to be Ikemoto. So the theory continues as this: Shibai Otsuki sacrificed himself for a chakra fruit, but during that sacrifice, when he was cheating death, he ended up evolving without actually eating the chakra fruit, because it is said that he cheated death and disregarded his body. So it must have been on the return back to his vessel where he realized that, yo, I don't actually need a physical body. And thus he transcended this current dimension to go into a higher one, a one of higher conscious. And this is what led to him being a god. So he didn't actually eat the final divine tree and it remained on this planet. And what happens next follows a similar thing to the other theory, where Kaguya and Ishiki come and they actually eat the chakra fruit. This is what would make a lot of sense to me if we are to believe that this theory is true. So now we have two possible theories, but for some odd reason, I'm not entirely convinced about what Momoshiki says. Momoshiki ends up telling us that omnipotence was used, but if Shibai Otsuki became a god, why would he end up using omnipotence on this planet? What would be the purpose? I don't really think that Shibai would really have a purpose of using omnipotence on this planet. We don't actually see Shibai, even in this current reality that we know him, we don't really see the fact of him using omnipotence nowadays. He's just chilling in this higher plane. And this is where we potentially have a third theory. And for all of you guys that have made it this far into the video, thank you. So this is a little bit of a bonus theory, but theory number 3 isn't actually too different. In fact, it is simply a combination of all of these theories. Potentially what ended up taking place is that we have the Shibai thing. The Shibai theory is first, but instead of Kaguya and Ishiki being the people that came next, the people that actually came next were the missing Otsutsukis. And the reason why these missing Otsutsukis were banished is because of what they may have done with Shibai Otsuki's remains. And this is where potentially what ended up happening to these Otsutsuki's, maybe they were turned into regular people, which is why they are banished. And we see that their tablets are carved up. Something potentially ended up happening to them where they are no longer considered Otsutsuki's, or whatever they did to Shibai Otsuki's remains is what annoyed the clan so much as to why they would be banished from the clan. As we already know that Shibai Otsuki, due to the method that he may have found, has been revered by the clan and viewed in such a huge light. So if Otsutsuki's came and tampered with his body, then whatever they did ended up being so bad that they were banished from the clan. And when we know the fact that we have a character like Ada, by simply receiving some of Shibai Otsuki's cells, she gained powers of omnipotence. And what do we know about omnipotence? It can only truly be mastered by an Otsutsuki. So if the missing Otsutsuki's came to Earth, they could have had access to Shibai Otsuki's remains, which is where they tampered with Shibai Otsuki's remains to become even more powerful and gain abilities like omnipotence. And this is why Momoshiki says that omnipotence was used multiple times in the past. This isn't the first time omnipotence was used. Omnipotence was used previously, and that is why the missing Otsutsuki's are banished, because they tampered with Shibai Otsuki's remains to obtain powers for themselves. Potentially, the missing Otsutsuki's were sent to Earth to take back Shibai Otsuki's remains, but they didn't. They didn't do so. They ended up using it for their own power, and thus leaving behind a chakra fruit that still wasn't eaten. They ended up fleeing because what they gained from Shibai Otsuki's remains was better than the chakra fruit that remained. And this is the theory that I feel like is most likely going to end up being true. There's going to be a mixture of all of these theories in one, but I'm extremely positive that somewhere in this video, you're gonna come back to this video and watch that something I said was right or was pointing towards the right direction. But I'm so curious as to see, what theory out of these three do you believe? Do you believe it's a combination like me, or is it one or the other? But what's really important is that you watch this video right here, as there is another element of the Otsutsuki clan that I didn't get the time to talk about, and that is potentially why some Otsutsukis may have went rogue from the Otsutsuki clan entirely. So make sure to watch this video right here.